everybody. This is day 1321. So let's see. Oops. See if I'm on. I'm going on Facebook right now to see. Of course, my phone restarted. A lot of weird things going on with phones. But when you are pursuing truth and you're doing it legally, you're using the system that's set in place, even though it's corrupted, right? We know that there's people that are abusing it. But when you are, Team Find Richard Halliday, when we're trying to do things with integrity, when we're trying to do things legally, uh, try to get justice for Richard through the democratic system, also uh, investigating. We did not appoint ourselves to be the investigators of our son's case. I want everyone to understand that. It was the CID and the command that appointed us the investigators of our son's case. This is something that needs to be repeated over and over again. And I see that I'm on, so that's great. Is that when Richard went missing, nobody contacted us. And when we contacted them, they threw us out. Okay. They took Richard off the rolls. They put Richard's case, they put the family in no man's land. I want people to understand that. They put us in no man's land. What do I mean by that? Because Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room on Fort Bliss, and the crime started happening on Fort Bliss. That was the jurisdiction. That was his jurisdiction. So, being in no man's land, if the military kicks you off when they have jurisdiction on Fort Bliss, then Richard is in no one's jurisdiction. But that wasn't really necessarily the entire case, because the crime happened there in El Paso, and so the DA office, Jaime Esparza, and into Yvonne Rosales and into Bill Hicks should have investigated Richard's case and contacted us, or we should have been notified, or it's just the not knowing the system. We have not played the system. We don't know the system. Matter of fact, we kind of avoid the system, and so this whole thing, because we're law-abiding, we are not so familiar now. 3.5 years later, you get a law degree, and you understand how the system works, and so um, just I will make sure that my grandchildren, and I have 9 grandchildren. Yeehaw! I hope I have some more. Um, they keep me going. I know I have to celebrate that, because uh, that is the quiver, right? That is the arrows in the quiver. That is the arrows in the quiver. That is the power behind doing what's right and just. It's fighting for the future of your children and your children's children, and so that keeps us going and keeps us doing these live streams, and of course many other things. Justice for Richard, but also justice for the victims of the Walmart mass shooting, because obviously it is not a doubt. Okay, there's not a doubt. There's no allegedly, and I probably will get in trouble for saying that. There's no allegedly. There is not a doubt. The evidence is out there, article after article after article, witness testimony, documented timelines of the Walmart mass shooting, that obviously we, the people, and especially the people of El Paso, have been fed a wrong narrative designed to capitalize off of the fear, off of the crime, right? And also to manipulate the politics there in El Paso against um, MAGA, against President Trump, against any of his supporters. And you see that with it's very, very obvious with Ernest Christopher Grant, who was the media sweetheart that was surrounded um, by, it's so obvious they are all connected, by Beto O'Rourke, right? Um, who is not a friend um, to Trump, by Chris Cuomo, who is absolutely not a friend of President Trump or the MAGA or President Trump's supporters, right? And, it's clearly with the other um, members that were turned into heroes, and they're far from it. Obviously, they're far from it because Christopher Grant had an open warrant for his arrest. He was arrested by the Secret Service. He was protected by law enforcement in El Paso because they refused to, what do you call that, take him over when he was arrested. They let him go. And he has a perpetual criminal record. He is ghosted. He's so protected that obviously at this point he must be some operative, some agent for, the FBI, the CID, I don't think CID, FBI or DEA, maybe another agency, obviously, because why isn't he arrested? And obviously the and I should have named this whole live stream, obviously, but I want to get into the results from all the votes today. But I have to really give some background every time I come on about what was going on at the time. And Ernest Christopher Grant is a huge, uh, a huge indication, a huge example, a huge example of the criminal group, the criminal network that obviously organized the Walmart mass shooting, that Patrick Crusius was part of. Okay, Patrick Crusius was part of the criminal network. 21 years old with a severe mental health condition. They used him. They took advantage of him, I believe. And then they put this narrative around him with this white supremacist narrative, this manifesto narrative, like he starts the shooting at like 10:46 or so, 10:46, maybe it's 10:36. Around that time, he starts the shooting. Right, he shoots outside of the Walmart. We know that because Memo Garcia was shot outside of the Walmart. Then he goes in. You see that picture with the AK-47 style rifle, which is, starts shooting, and Christopher Grant is supposed to be throwing soda bottles at him. Yet, the El Paso police say that's a lie, right? And then Christopher Grant gets shot twice in the belly, right there in the abdomen, and is okay, okay enough, is okay enough to walk through Walmart, to go into the auto area, hide back there, and then get into a truck, and be driven to the hospital, right? Um, to a certain hospital too. It has to be a certain hospital, right? Because this is absolutely very controlled, very organized. But they made a lot of mistakes, and they made a lot. Those mistakes are, rising up, coming out of the fog of this horror, this absolute horror, and obviously, Ernest Christopher Grant is a great example of what we can plainly see as part of the setup, part of the insanity of this horrendous crime, and of course his relationship, how they, with the media, how the media grabbed a hold of him. There's others too, but they really grabbed a hold of him to perpetuate this racist anti-MAGA, anti-MAGA. You know what MAGA stands for? Make America Great Again. What does Make America Great Again mean? Manufacturing, supporting small businesses, supporting a republic, law, being law-abiding. Um, you know, that's what Make America Great Again means, is, having wealth in the hands of the people. So there's huge middle class, a huge middle class, right? With lots of different um, inventions and, you know, this wonderful world that we have lived in, that we call America, where even the middle class could hire in help for their um, households and everything like that. Um, you just go back and look in time, and you have this picture where the middle class had enough money to run their businesses, also hire help, creating jobs, and uh, you know, making it America beautiful, not only beautiful but law-abiding, moral. This is what a Make America Great Again is. And so to have these people, um, work against MAGA, work against President Trump, no matter how you feel about him, he stands for MAGA, right? He stands for Make America Great Again. And, as time goes on, knowing in 2015 his financials and all of his businesses, which one right after the other, turning old derelict property into hotels and golf courses, and creating all these jobs, and making the world, everywhere he went, it prosperous, and um, growing the middle class, right? Growing the middle class. When you are producing and creating factories and creating jobs, you're growing the middle class, right? And to see that, and to see the opportunity zones when he was president, um, that were part of these cities, in these cities, to renew and give people opportunity to create small businesses in the inner cities, in these opportunity zones, and pay very little tax, next to no tax, to run their businesses, um, is just remarkable thing to see. And then when the riots started, to overlay the fires of the riots with um, the the cities in the United States and see that the riots and the fires were in the opportunity zones, that there were people that were working against the opportunity zones, um, lighting them on fire, rioting, where middle class people are trying to make America great again in the inner cities with their businesses, to see them being lit on fire. And it was just so heartbreaking. But it tells you that there is an active group, an active criminal group that bullies people, that want to capitalize for themselves and leave no middle class, right? They want to extort and capitalize for themselves and leave nothing to the middle class. And that's why you see this middle class shrinking, because there's a group, an active group, working against the people of this country. And that's why you see this huge expansion on the wealth of the few richest, the 1% or whatever they call it, it's the 1%, and then the middle class just, the 10% on top just trying to survive to maintain, and then the middle class being obliterated, with all these high taxes and the high inflation and all of these things. It is really clear that there is a group that actively work against, that have control of the media, because don't forget, it was the media that was using Christopher Grant, a perpetual criminal, right, who apparently is a total agent, a total plant for one of our agencies, right? Maybe DEA, maybe FBI, maybe, who does he work for, right? They ghosted him, and they don't want you to look into him, right? So there absolutely is a group, and he is a good example of that, because you can just take out one afternoon and do a little bit of investigating into the articles that happened in August of 2019 and the following months, and you can see the media just grabbing hold of him and perpetuating this harm on the people of El Paso, in order to pass this huge bond, to capitalize on it, to make the people of El Paso poorer, because this is hundreds of millions of dollars. They wanted to pass a $1.2 billion bond, and yet, and they did, and they passed it for hundreds of millions of dollars, and, for a police department, for a police building. What are you talking about, right? What are you talking about? In order to have that police building worth hundreds of millions of dollars, which, that's who's the builder of that, right? Who's the builder? Who's getting those contracts? Woo, that's a pretty penny in his pocket, right? For some concrete. And, this, in order for that to be worth it, they need to have a lot of crime, right? So what are they telling us? They want to develop crime. And so absolutely, it's obvious that the Walmart mass shooting was orchestrated, absolutely planned, and that the narrative was absolutely perpetuated through Christopher Grant and a few others, to say that Patrick Crusius, a 21-year-old, who had no history of any kind of racism, no history of any kind of affiliation with white supremacist groups or anything like that, wrote this manifesto right in the middle of his shooting. Well, at least he posted it right in the middle of his shooting, that he, in 30 minutes time, according to the witnesses, uh, well, not according to the witnesses, because the witnesses say four shooters. Which who is the one that I just saw? I was just reading. Let me see if I saved it. Um, no, anyway, I'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think it's really important. There was a witness that I think I have it right here. I'm trying to remember exactly. Because this is going to bug me until I see it. Um, see if I see it in here. I'm seeing all these others. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Adriana Quezada. Adriana Quezada, one of the first eyewitnesses interviewed in the aftermath of the shooting, in a remarkable interview that has now been taken down, y'all. Like the one below. Okay, so I'm reading this article. Well, that's been taken down. She told reporters on the scene that she had seen 3 or 4 men dressed in black firing weapons from near the front of the store. They were the ones shooting because I could see their weapons and the bullets firing, Quesada said, mimicking with her hand the motion of shell casings ejecting from the rifle. So, yeah, so this is, one of the very first from the scene um, witnesses that there were multiple shooters. But we are led to believe on the same day, without any kind of investigation, that, it was a lone shooter, a 21-year-old, where the federal judge lets everyone know at the sentencing that he has a severe mental health condition. And yet, Judge Madrano doesn't even put a scheduling order to say, look, we have the federal judge just saying at the sentencing that mental health condition. I want to see his mental health evaluation pronto. Pronto. And where is he? Let's get him in my court. I want to see him in front of me. Judge Madrano doesn't even do that. So, absolutely, that's another indication with the coverage of Chris Grant, of the coverage of the witnesses that were at the scene, the eyewitnesses, and not even bringing up eyewitness Glendon Oakley Jr. with the M4s, and then us getting this information that brown tip bullets were at the scene. Um, you know, we're it is so obvious that this was an orchestrated political hit against MAGA, against making America great again, because they wanted the criminal network wanted to keep their network in place because they were being audited, um, and I think partially because Richard had made complaints. So this is why Richard was in the mix in all of this. Um, and then, of course, you had Glendon Oakley Jr. being an eyewitness to the M4s, and him being then found dead in the barracks on April 2020, just a couple months before Richard was forcibly removed and murdered. And I say that we don't have his remains, but absolutely it's so obvious through all of the information that we have. And here we are, the investigators of our son's case, and also fighters for his justice. And so we can't get emotional. We can't even mourn his death. We can't bury him. Nothing, because we need to fight to even get his remains. I mean, this is, knowing full well that his remains are partial remains, because of the brutality of the murder. Because this is a high stakes criminal network. This is high stakes, and they're not fooling around, and they're murderers. They're murderers, and they're letting murderers walk, and they organize mass shootings. so that they can capitalize. It's like, what is this, Hunger Games or something? Is this like Hunger Games? Um, it's it's so obvious that we have been lied to about this, and so here we come. The politics of it. 2019, um, the coming up, be, you know, into 2020, the burning of the opportunity zones, um, and really, the COVID, they tried everything, right? They just tried everything in 2020 to derail the election. And and why did they want to derail the election? Well, it's obvious to Team Fine Richard Halliday now. They oppose making America great again. They oppose the middle class. They oppose the people of this country, the working class. Absolutely. And you see that right now. The last years, just with the inflation rate, just with the price of energy, just with the lack of decades where you only have a few car makers. Why can't we have some new inventions, right? The lack of new inventions, the lack of opportunity, because they attack the opportunity zones. And so, and they actually attack the opportunity zones. If you map out where the riot fires were, and you map out where President Trump's opportunity zones were, and you overlay them, they match. They match. It is obvious then that there is a group that attacked President Trump's MAGA. Okay? President Trump's and the supporters that want to make America great again. It's very obvious. And he was president at the time. Richard was making complaints. There was an audit. We know there was an audit because of the confirmation from Brigadier General David Stewart, from Dirty Agent Marlon Soto, and from the treasonous, vile, vulgar Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. Okay? We know because of their confirmations that before they got there, and I would say, Clem Coward too is vulgar. I never talked to him, right? He was Richard's general. Why didn't he talk to us, right? And what about Matlock, who was the commanding general at the time of Fort Bliss? Where was he, and where is he now, right? But it's really pretty vulgar when you have a general agreeing to come in and cover up this level of crime for a star, right? That's pretty gross. The antithesis of defending the Constitution. It really is. So that's definitely, we know that there was audits going on because they were finding all of the weapons. And we know it was about weapons because that was the topic. The barracks were flushed with weapons. And of course, Dirty Agent Marlon Soto said it was the whole of Fort Bliss. So that means they were all getting audited. And so the focus was on the criminal network that was trafficking and smuggling and up to no good. And so that to us, seemingly, apparently, is the motive for them orchestrating the Walmart mass shooting, to make something so horrible that all eyes would be off of them, that people would need them. Oh, we need the CID. Oh, we need the FBI. We we just had a mass shooting. And so that they orchestrated that. How do we know that they orchestrated that? Besides Christopher Grant, besides the witnesses, besides the media, who they deemed their media sweethearts, who they interviewed, um, even even Texas Heart was interviewed, okay, in the Dallas Morning News. Um, who they chose to interview is very interesting, and um, but besides that, we also have the combination of Danae Katzen with Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, with the chief medical examiner that is not even an American citizen. Um, they're at, this 3905 Bliss Avenue, with others. The 3905 Bliss Avenue seems to be a very full house, Um, and then you have, of course, Lilani Hart getting her mail at Dreams Cabaret, which also, um, really is right next to a big lot of tactical move storage units, right? Um, a big lot right next to Dreams Cabaret. Woo! That's nice, and we know that in order to do this kind of trafficking, in order to do this kind of smuggling, it ends up being even more criminal because it goes binational, because you smuggle across the border, and then when you're binational, then you need money laundering, right? Because then you have to get the money back in, you have to launder it. You can't make it obvious that you just sold a bunch of weapons and got some money. You have to launder the money, and you have to launder it through an LLC, a company. That's how they normally do it, or through property, through real estate, and then that causes some problems because you need visas. You need, people want to cross the border quite a bit. So you need to have the borders open. You need to have these visas. You don't want authorities vetting who you're letting over, right? You don't want that because that's going to interfere in your criminal enterprise, your little business plan um, of trafficking and smuggling. And so that ends up being an immigration problem. So then you need immigration fraud. And in order to have the immigration fraud, you need to have identity theft. And so then you have this huge identity theft problem. And so one crime, um, leads to another crime and leads to another crime. And when you have that much crime, then you have to do a lot of covering up. And to do a lot of covering up and a lot of damage control, right? You don't want the witnesses, you don't want the whistleblowers. Then you have to do a lot of intimidation, you have to do a lot of bullying, you have to do a lot of harassment. So then you have to have agents to do that, right? And that gets expensive. So why not, get into the law enforcement and just hire out these agents? Just let's make them FBI informants, and we can send them out to be attack dogs. We can, pay off media. It gets very expensive. You have to pay off media, and they can be the attack dogs to bully and harass anybody that wants to make America great again, wants to have a law-abiding society, wants to have a safe area for their children to play, doesn't want the pedophilia, doesn't want the sex cults, because of course, how do you blackmail certain people in certain high positions? You find their weakness, and a lot of times that weakness is sexual. And so then you run these sex little cults, you run these sex cults, and then you film it, and then you blackmail and you bully and harass, and then occasionally it turns into murder. And that's where Richard came in. That's where I believe I believe that Glendon Oakley Jr. Um, was also murdered. I have my suspicions on that one, because I think that absolutely a 21-year-old, healthy, beautiful young man like he was just didn't die in his barracks room. So, and yeah, I absolutely suspect that he was murdered. And, with all of the evidence that we have with Richard, absolutely he was forcibly removed and murdered. So I hope that that really explains kind of the motives with all of this, and where our investigation, really, really detailed investigation, years long, every day, hours and hours, Team Find Richard Halliday, multiple people, because we have connections in El Paso and Washington, D.C., and around the world. Around the world, we have connections, and on Fort Bliss. And so, we even think about it. The DES even wrote a letter, right? Even wrote a letter, and he's absolutely part of this criminal network. Okay, and that's Thomas Kane, absolutely, along with Leilani Hart, along with Dallas Hart, who is Richard's platoon leader, along with James Hart, along with uh, the DA, the DA, Bill Hicks, who, um, you know, the open records are so damning to them, and so now they're saying, they're playing games with us about getting the open records, wanting to charge us $1,800, to get some open records, which is thwarting democracy, because those records are not for the elite, the people that have money in their pockets. This is the assault on the middle class again. This is the assault on MAGA. Those records are for the people to, because this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And those records are for us. That's why they even keep it. That's why they even have to keep it, is for us, because it is our government, and we are allowed to see what they do. We are allowed to see how they communicate with one another and what they're communicating about. And we would like to know what Ballard Shapley is talking to his brother Elliot Shapley about. Okay, Ballard Shapley is the number one. I guess he's number one assistant district attorney. We would like to know what he's talking about to Elliot Shapley. What is he talking to with Bill Hicks, with Justin Underwood, with Bob Moore, with, we would like to know, because we are the people. We are the people, and why didn't the DA office indict anyone in our son's case when it is clear that they absolutely should have done it? Okay? Absolutely should have done it. So the DA dropped the ball. Why? Why are they dropping the ball in the Walmart case? Clearly, when they have no scheduling order at all, no motions from either one of the attorneys, the defense attorney or the prosecuting attorney. And this is, that whole gag order of July 1st, 2022, the whole, bringing down the hammer on Yvonne Rosales by Judge Medrano. When you read through those, it is shocking, because he's saying she hasn't passed one motion, yet he hasn't even gave a scheduling order. He hasn't given a scheduling order, and he gives the other attorneys a free pass. This was absolutely an attack on Yvonne Rosales, okay? And, we understand that Yvonne Rosales had some, personal no-nos going on with Alhana, right? Alhana, George Alhana, um, that did hurt her situation. But what was she doing? She was doing something good in there for Judge Madrano to come hard on her and give everyone else. Obviously, he is up to no good because he gives everyone else a free pass and he gives himself a free pass. And then he breaks his own gag order by addressing the community, saying, oh, breaking his, the the canons of the judicial um, etiquette, right? How he's supposed to conduct himself as a judge, um, saying, "Oh yeah, these lawyers are so great, and me, I'm just doing the best I can with the 6 months only that I've had." Baloney, he misrepresents the whole case, and only if you follow, like we've been forced to follow this because this is part of Richard's case, do you see the blatant lies, you see the blatant misrepresentations, you see the anomalies and their irregularities and the violations of his conduct as a judge. And so to see the politics play out like they did today, and it looks like for the DA's office, we are going to have a runoff between Montoya and Trejo. And so, uh, it is very clear by the last election with Montoya and Rosales that the criminal group, this is my assessment on just putting all the pieces together, but that the group that are the bullies, that hire the bullies, the criminal network want Montoya, okay? Because Montoya was supposed to win against Yvonne Rosales. I think Yvonne Rosales won by a couple hundred votes, okay? So that is very clear that that they really thought that Montoya would win. So I don't know him so well. I just know that in the puzzle pieces, he doesn't look so, like, his supporters don't look so good. Okay, they don't look so good. So then you have one left. Casas, Miss Casas is out. She lost badly today, and so you have Alma Trejo now. So Alma Trejo is in. As far as really being the only choice, if Team Fine Richard Halliday has any say so, and we don't have really any say so, but Team Fine Richard Halliday El Paso does. They have a say so in the runoff election, and I would say that Alma Trejo, who has her name on giving Richard justice by saying that was a nothing burger what Belen Rocha with Melendez tried to set Richard up, and this is my apparently looks like it, that they tried to set Richard up to discredit him with a DUI, and Alma Trejo, exonerated Richard for that one in the best way that she could. And we really appreciate that. So, if she's gonna, know how to serve justice, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So, especially Richard, because you have to remember, there was there was a lot more going on in the back of what was going on with Richard. The whole purpose of that DUI was to discredit him. People wanted him discredited. People wanted that to stick. Even the Army wanted that to stick. Matter of fact, the Army didn't even tell us, really explain to us, even the SJA, what all that meant, that Alma Trejo did. They were working against Richard. They wanted him to look like, as the Stars and Stripes portrayed Richard in a smear campaign, a drunk driver. And that's not what happened at all. When it happens in a parking lot, y'all, there's no driving. Okay, there's no driving. It's just a parking lot. And so they tried to really discredit Richard in a really sloppy way. And so with Alma Trejo standing up against that, okay, it wasn't just, okay, here's this kid, with this setup of a DUI. No, there are powerful people behind it. This was a general that wanted it to stick. This was the SJA that wanted it to stick. This was a DA that, well, it was a DA at the time. Yeah, was Jaime Esparza at the time. They wanted this to stick, the criminal network, so that he could not be a good witness to what he was whistleblowing about. Okay? That's what they do. And that's why these sex cults are so terrible. Because that's how they blackmail. It's just so evil. It's just one evil perpetuating another evil. And it's just putting all the puzzle pieces together absolutely makes it obvious that they were protecting their criminal business plan. So that involved Fort Bliss, that involved El Paso, that involved, of course, Juarez, Mexico, and into Mexico, just making loads of money. And yeah, but people get really hurt, and the middle class gets hurt. And so with this, which is most of us, right? Most of us. And I would say all of us. Because even these wealthy people that live in this criminal, evil network get hurt. All of us get hurt. So it's not worth it at all on any level. So this today, Super Tuesday, seems to be an outcry of sanity for justice, for which means making America great again. And that's why President Trump was victorious, because he's the symbol of that. And it's not him, it's a symbol of justice. It's a symbol of a country that is for the people, by the people, of the people. That's what the people want. Under God, with liberty and justice for all. That's what they want. And so I see that this Super Tuesday overwhelmingly voted that message. And that is a good thing. That's a really good thing. And it's a very good thing for Richard's case. And it's a very good thing for the Walmart mass shooting case, because there's so many victims with that, right? There's so many. Think about all of El Paso. People still not even able to speak about what happened that day, because it was just so shocking and so horrendous. And to speak about it, you have to fear for your life, right? you absolutely have to fear for your life, because this criminal network had their goons out there to do to whoever talked out like they did to Glendon Oakley Jr. and of course to Richard, So um, yeah, it's a terrible, terrible crime, and this is a good day uh, coming up. You know, people say, well, how can this take so long? Well, you know, you're going to the CID, and they're involved. They're part of the criminal network. This certain person, right? Um, and you know, you're going to the FBI, and then you have Jesus Nieto part of it. You're going to intelligence, and you have Cynthia Hernandez Nieto involved in there. You're going to the G3, and you have Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado with his major family connections. Okay, major, right? And then you know, and then you're going to the general who's been given an order. You go to the DES, and he's part of the criminal network. You know, you go, it's you go to the media, El Paso Matters, and he's part of the criminal network. He's colluding with Justin Underwood and Bill Hicks before Bill Hicks became the district attorney to unseat Yvonne Rosales, a duly elected district attorney. Yeah, you know, so this does take um, a lot longer than what it would if we had not so much corruption, right? We have to weed out the corruption all the time, and we have to put safeguards in there, and so we'll see how this um, all works out. You have to just be willing to, uh, you know, withstand and keep going over and over and over again to do some good in this world. You know, it just doesn't happen overnight. And to get justice for Richard, you just have to keep going. And a lot of people, you know, with jobs and things like that, and God has just blessed us. To be able to do this with the right people to help us to do this with our connections. I mean, a whole life of preparing us to do this, and so we can't drop the ball now. We have to keep going, and I think in this election year, especially after today, this is, you know, I think it looks very, very positive for us, and it doesn't look good for the criminals. It doesn't. Because the people are waking up. And that's the reason why it doesn't look good for the criminals. When the people start waking up and saying, no, no more. No more criminal enterprise, no more bullying, no more, you know, harassment and sex cults and murders, right? When they start standing up, that's the power. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, right? So we do it under God, and you know, we can't depend on the agencies to do it for us. We can't depend on the media to do it for us. We have to stick together and say we want a just society, we want a lawful society, and we want criminals held accountable for their evil crimes. We want to hold them accountable. And sometimes that hurts, because sometimes those criminals are, you know, closer to us than we would like. But we have to be brave, and we have to understand that we need to hold these criminals accountable. And we need to do it lawfully and peacefully and calmly, and which is really, really hard as a mother of Richard Halliday, knowing what happened to him. It's very hard to stay calm and not emotional. I'm trying very, very hard. So thank you so much, and please share the memes, share the live streams, share what we're, everything that's going on, because we're confident that when people look at it, they will absolutely know. They can even read through the lines now. They can read through the BS, right? The false narratives, and they can make sense out of it now. Once you're out of the hypnosis, you can absolutely look through the fog and see clearly, right? You can absolutely read through the BS and know that the wool is being, they're trying to hypnotize you again, right? They're trying to control you with fear and words and whatever to capitalize for themselves. So thank you, everyone. God bless you, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing. But it looks like MAGA is very strong. It looks like MAGA is very strong, and so that's a very good thing for us. Let's make America great again. Okay, everyone, good night. Bye-bye.